Gabrielle's contractions started just after 3 a.m. She was home alone, sitting on the edge of their California king bed in their modest Charlotte apartment, clutching her belly as waves of pain rippled through her. She tried calling Terrence twice. No answer. He had stormed out earlier that evening after a small argument over him skipping dinner with her. At 9 months pregnant, Gabrielle had grown used to Terrence's distance. He hadn't been the same in months. Still, she never expected to give birth without him. She hailed a ride share, breathing through contractions, and checked into the hospital alone. Nurses settled her into the labor and delivery room. Hours passed. No Terrence. Just as she was being prepped for an epidural, a nurse walked in holding an envelope. "Your husband dropped this off with security," she said softly. Gabrielle, shaking from labor and emotion, opened it. Inside were signed divorce papers. Her vision blurred, but the header read clearly, "Final notice of divorce." Tears streamed down Gabrielle's face, mixing with sweat as the pain of childbirth was now coupled with soul-deep betrayal. She clutched the rails of the bed, feeling utterly abandoned. She asked the nurse to leave and cried quietly, holding the papers in her trembling hand. 10 years of marriage, a home, a life, gone in the middle of labor. When the baby crown and her son entered the world, Gabrielle sobbed, not just from pain but from heartbreak. No one stood by her side. No hand to hold. No kiss to welcome their child. Just sterile walls and the cold realization that the man she loved had chosen this moment, this exact moment, to discard her. Later that night, while feeding her newborn in the dim hospital room, Gabrielle's cousin Tiffany called, her voice trembling. "Girl, Terrence is on Instagram, posting pictures with some woman. They are at dinner. Champagne. Cake." He captioned it, "New beginnings." Gabrielle felt her heart sink. He had left her for another woman, and celebrated it while she brought his child into the world. The weeks that followed were some of the darkest in Gabrielle's life. With nowhere to go, she moved in with Tiffany, sharing a one-bedroom apartment in the South End. Her savings were nearly gone. Terrence had drained their joint account just days before the birth. When she called the bank, they said his name was the primary holder, everything legally his. The apartment, leased in his name. He locked her out. Gabrielle was left with a baby, a diaper bag, and 2 suitcases. At night, she lay on Tiffany's pull-out couch, nursing her son while wiping silent tears. Terrence never called, never visited, never asked about the baby. Shauna, his new girlfriend, hosted them constantly. Beach trips, brunch dates, concerts. Gabrielle blocked the account eventually, but the damage had been done. The betrayal haunted her in her dreams. Gabrielle had no time to grieve. She needed diapers, formula, rent money. She picked up work at a local clinic, answering phones during the night shift while Tiffany watched the baby. It paid little, but it was something. During her breaks, she researched business grants and brainstormed product ideas. She had always loved making homemade shea butter and oils, something she used during her pregnancy to help with stretch marks and relaxation. It gave her peace. Slowly, she began mixing small batches again. At first, just for herself. Then Tiffany suggested selling them online. Gabrielle created a small Etsy store, listing her handmade Glow and Grace products for postpartum moms. Orders were slow, but reviews were glowing. "I felt seen," one customer wrote. That message gave Gabrielle hope she hadn't felt since before the divorce. Meanwhile, Terrence thought life couldn't be better. Shauna was everything Gabrielle wasn't, so he believed. Younger, more adventurous. She laughed at his jokes, encouraged him to live a little. They moved into a condo together, and Terrence funded a new startup idea he called SwiftCap Logistics. Shauna hyped it up online. She told him she believed in his brilliance, and Terrence, drunk on attention, registered every asset in her name for tax and licensing purposes. Shauna convinced him it would be easier that way since her credit score was better. He agreed without question. After all, she loved him, right? Back in Charlotte, Gabrielle juggled work, motherhood, and building her brand. She applied for a local business grant through a nonprofit supporting single mothers. Her application stood out. During the interview, she shared her story, how she was left during labor, how she turned pain into a product. The panel was moved to tears. Weeks later, she received a $10,000 grant to launch her brand officially. She cried holding the check. With the money, she bought better supplies, designed custom packaging, and set up a professional website. Glow and Grace was born. She rented a small table at weekend pop-up markets, carrying her son strapped to her chest. People stopped, listened, bought. Her confidence slowly returned. Terrence didn't notice Gabrielle's rise. He was too busy crashing. Within months, his business started flopping. Delays, mismanaged funds, and Shauna, once affectionate and supportive, grew distant. She took frequent girls' trips and was always texting someone named Jay. Terrence confronted her once. She laughed in his face. "You got jealous energy," she said, walking out. One night, he tried logging into the SwiftCap account to review their finances. Access denied. Password changed. He checked the business registration, still under Shauna's name. That's when panic set in. He called her. No answer. He texted. Nothing. When he returned to the condo, her things were gone. So was his laptop and his savings. Terrence's world unraveled fast. His name was not on any lease, bank account, or business paperwork. He couldn't even access the condo building's garage anymore. Shauna had revoked the key fob. When he called the police, they informed him it was a civil matter. Legally, he had no ownership. He tried contacting friends, but word had spread about how he left Gabrielle during labor. Doors that once opened with a handshake now slammed shut. Employers saw the viral threads online, screenshots of the divorce papers, photos of Shauna's New Beginnings post, and angry comments about the kind of man who'd abandon his pregnant wife. No one wanted that PR headache. Gabrielle, unaware of Terrence's downfall, continued to build. She rented a small studio and filled it with shelves of ingredients, shipping boxes, and baby toys. Her son, Micah, toddled between shelves, laughing as she filled jars with whipped shea butter. When the orders became too much to handle alone, she hired 2 other single mothers she met through the shelter network. It wasn't just a business anymore, it was a movement. One of her customers, a lifestyle blogger, posted a glowing review, and it went viral. Glow and Grace began receiving hundreds of orders a week. Gabrielle expanded to a larger workspace, this time with a mural on the wall that read, "Built from pain, made to shine." Terrence, meanwhile, was sleeping in his car parked outside a 24-hour gym. The last of his friends stopped answering his calls. His credit cards were maxed out. One night, he checked Instagram and saw Gabrielle smiling in a photo at a women's business expo, her booth surrounded by people. She looked radiant, healed. Micah, now a toddler, stood next to her with a tiny apron on that read "Mommy's CEO." Terrence's hands trembled. He zoomed in, eyes stinging. That was supposed to be his son, his family, his life. Determined to reclaim some piece of what he'd lost, Terrence showed up at Micah's daycare one afternoon, unannounced. The staff refused to let him in. "You're not listed on the birth certificate," the director explained politely. "You'll need legal documentation." He yelled, threatened to call the cops, but they stood firm. Gabrielle had full legal custody. He was a stranger now, a ghost trying to haunt what he abandoned. Humiliated, he walked away, muttering curses under his breath. Gabrielle learned of the incident through a daycare report. She froze when she read the name. She hadn't heard from Terrence in nearly 2 years. Her first reaction was fear, then clarity. She called a lawyer that same day and filed for a protective order. It was granted swiftly. Terrence could no longer approach her or Micah. That night, she stood at the window of her apartment holding her son close. She whispered, "No one is ever taking you from me." And she meant it. Meanwhile, Shauna resurfaced in Atlanta, flaunting her new life with a flashy producer named Jay Hollis. She posted photos in luxury hotels, spa retreats, and poolside brunches. What Terrence didn't know was that she had used his business to launder money for Jay's shady operations. When authorities started investigating SwiftCap's missing funds and shady wire transfers, Terrence's name came up as the listed operations partner. He was slapped with a fraud investigation. And Shauna? She had already fled the country. With no lawyer and no resources, Terrence tried to represent himself. The court filings were thick with numbers he couldn't explain and decisions he hadn't made. But it didn't matter. His signature was on the paperwork. His name was on the filings. He was held financially responsible for over $120,000 in damages. His license was suspended due to failure to pay penalties. His passport was frozen. The judge showed no sympathy. "You willingly handed control of your business to someone with no legal tie to you," she said sternly. "That's not fraud. That's foolishness." Gabrielle's world, in contrast, was blooming. Glow and Grace landed a deal with a national retailer. Her products appeared on the shelves of 10 boutique stores across the South. She hired a small team of full-time employees, mostly women from shelters or reentry programs. She moved into a townhome with a backyard where Micah could run freely. Each night, she read to him from a book of affirmations. "You are loved. You are chosen. You are never alone." And in her heart, she healed a little more. By the time Micah turned 4, Gabrielle had been invited to speak at conferences, podcasts, and business schools. Her story, once one of heartbreak, was now seen as a masterclass in resilience. At a women's empowerment summit in Atlanta, Gabrielle stood on stage in a flowing blush suit, her curls cascading past her shoulders. She spoke calmly, confidently. "He left me in labor, but pain wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of my empire." The crowd rose to their feet. In that moment, Gabrielle realized she no longer needed revenge. Her healing was the revenge. Terrence watched that speech from a shared TV at the halfway house where he was now living. His roommate turned up the volume, not realizing Terrence knew the woman on screen. As Gabrielle's words rang out, Terrence stared blankly. His beard was unkempt. His shoes had holes. He had nothing. No job, no home, no family. He had tried to email Gabrielle once, months ago. She never replied. A second attempt was blocked. She had moved on, and the world had moved with her. He remembered the night Shauna first messaged him. The flirty texts. The secret meetups. The way she made Gabrielle seem old and dull by comparison. He thought he was upgrading. Instead, he'd thrown away gold for a counterfeit thrill. And now, even his pride was gone. The men in the halfway house only knew him as the dude with the baby mama on TV. That was all he had left, a title that no longer belonged to him. Gabrielle never wished him harm, but she also never looked back. She focused on her son, her business, and her peace. One Sunday, she sat with Micah at a local park. He was coloring quietly beside her. "Mama," he asked, "why don't I have a daddy like the other kids?" Gabrielle's heart tightened. She reached over and held his tiny hand. "You have all the love you need," she said softly. "Not everyone stays, but the ones who matter, they always do." Later that year, Gabrielle launched a second brand, Resilient Roots, a wellness line focused on emotional healing and inner strength. The logo featured a blooming tree growing out of cracked ground. Her story was featured in Essence, Ebony, and even a national news outlet. Her face, once tear-streaked in a hospital bed, was now seen across billboards and bus stops. The world admired her, but more importantly, she admired herself. One evening, after putting Micah to sleep, Gabrielle stood at the window sipping tea. Her phone buzzed, a notification. Terrence had been arrested for violating probation. Fraud charges. She exhaled slowly. There was a time she might have celebrated his fall. But now, she simply whispered, "I forgive you," into the night. Not for him, but for herself. Terrence served 6 months. When released, he worked as a dishwasher at a local diner in South Carolina. He tried dating, but every woman eventually Googled his name. He'd become a cautionary tale, a meme, a case study in self-destruction. One night, he scrolled through his old photos, Gabrielle laughing, Micah's sonogram, their first Christmas together. He burst into tears, collapsing on his thin mattress. "I had everything," he whispered, "and I threw it away." Meanwhile, Micah started kindergarten. He was bright, kind, and creative, just like his mother. Gabrielle volunteered at his school and donated free wellness kits to new mothers in the community. Teachers often asked her how she stayed so grounded. "Grace," she'd say with a smile. And gratitude. She never denied her past, but she didn't let it define her. One day, Gabrielle received a letter with no return address. Inside was a wrinkled photo, her, Terrence, and baby Micah. On the back, in shaky handwriting, it read, "I'm sorry for everything. I wish I could go back. Take care of our son. T." She folded the photo quietly and placed it in a drawer. Some wounds weren't meant to reopen. In the summer of that year, Gabrielle hosted her first annual Glow Motherhood Retreat. Hundreds of women from around the country attended. They journaled. They cried. They healed. Gabrielle stood on stage, looking out at them with love. "We are not what was done to us," she said. "We are what we choose to do next." That line became the Foundation's tagline. Terrence, now working as a janitor at a rundown motel, saw a flyer about Gabrielle's retreat taped to a telephone pole. He pulled it down, stared at it, and tucked it in his pocket. Not to confront her, just to remember, to hold on to proof that she had survived, and he hadn't destroyed her. That knowledge, strangely, gave him peace. He stopped trying to reach her after that. Years passed. Gabrielle's empire expanded. Her face graced magazine covers. She appeared on morning shows. But at home, she was simply mommy. She still cooked, cleaned, and chased Micah through the backyard sprinkler. Fame never changed her heart. It just amplified her purpose. On Micah's 10th birthday, he asked, "Mom, do you think Dad ever loved you?" Gabrielle paused, brushing crumbs from the cake plate. "I think he loved a version of me, but he didn't love himself enough to keep us." Micah nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad you stayed, though." Gabrielle kissed his forehead. "I'll always stay." Terrence, now older and grayer, worked quietly at a church shelter, sweeping floors and serving meals. He never told anyone his full story, but when he saw struggling young fathers, he'd say, "Don't let pride cost you your family." They never knew it was personal, but he did. Every single day, Gabrielle stood one night on a stage in Los Angeles, accepting a humanitarian award. As the crowd clapped, she held back tears. "I was left during labor. I almost broke, but I didn't. I built something instead. For every woman who's ever been left behind, you are not forgotten. You are not broken. You are becoming." The room rose to its feet. Somewhere far away, Terrence saw the headline flash across a dusty TV screen, and all he could whisper was, "She made it." If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.